Morning, church. It is good to be with you this morning. We spent some of the time in Bible class, or all the time in Bible class, talking through some of the details and specific of Midwestern Children's Home. And I just come this morning to say thank you and to bring greetings from our campus, from our staff, from our children. Even though you may never meet them, we try to inspire in them the idea of there are people loving on you, them, that you'll never meet this side of eternity. And yet that's making an eternal difference in their souls, in their lives. And I say thank you for joining us in the work and the ministry of Midwestern Children's Home. Just wanted to say briefly as we get started this morning that things are good this year at Midwestern Children's Home. We're running 4 sets of house parents. Wouldn't mind running 5 if you're interested in house parenting. We'll love to talk to you afterwards about that. I know that's a big ask and a simple moment here, but we'd be longing for that. But we're serving up to 12 girls and 12 boys in our program, and really striving to come alongside them and bring the healing to their hearts to help them understand the hope of Jesus and the faith that He's called us to. And the blessings as we walk in faith with Him. I'm still looking for a program director. That would be a social worker type person that would come lead our staff. If you know of anybody along those lines, I'd be glad. I'd really want to talk to you about that. And we're still looking at expanding our fundraising and bringing in a donor relations person. And if you know of anybody that would have a heart towards fundraising for Midwestern Children's Home, I'd really love to talk to you about that as well, as we want to stand firm and true financially, as well as we do in the good work that God has called us to at Midwestern Children's Home. And so I just lay those things before you. I know that Mark and Scott have been to our annual fundraising event that we call our gala, our live auction, silent auction gala. They've made the journey these last few years, and it's a party. You guys all might all welcome, but we've enjoyed seeing them there, and if any more of you could come to that, we would love that. We are in the infancy of planning that event. We'll tell you that we've got 2 stays on Marco Island in Florida we'll be auctioning off. All of that would be bringing proceeds to the home. And we have a chalet or cabin in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, that area. Sleeps 23, I think, has an indoor swimming pool. And we'll be auctioning that off as well this year. So some opportunities there. People vacation in different ways, but we know we have those things, and we're still working on that. If you have something that you wouldn't mind donating for the auction, please see me afterwards about that as well, as we're still in the early stages with that planning for that event. We raised $115,000 last year through the gala, and some of that was those vacation packages. We can tell you a crazy story about a dessert dash. Crazy idea. Free, good, really homemade desserts. We made $45,000 off the dessert dash last year. So pay for those desserts, anyways, very, very much blessing. That has helped us stay on course this year financially where we need to be, and we look to finish out this year strong. And just an opportunity to be with you this morning. I'm very thankful for that as well. This morning, I want to bring to you a lesson on the idea that Christ is enough. And that enough word is kind of a strange word to put at the end of that statement. If I would have said Christ is Lord, we could have had a great sermon on Christ being Lord, right? We sang about Christ being our Redeemer, and we have a great sermon on Christ being our Redeemer. But I was challenged with this thought of, well, what about Christ being enough? And what does that word enough really feel like, look like? So enough, what does that mean? Well, we can put this in, if you're parenting, maybe you've said something along this line: I've had enough out of you. That would be a limit, a top, right? Children may not appreciate that thought if a parent were to share that. Sometimes, in the day and age we live in with going out to eat and those kind of things, maybe we politely tell a waitress, I've had enough, I'm good, thank you. They don't refill the glass of tea, or they don't bring out whatever else, wherever you might be. Sometimes we just want to say in life, enough is enough. And we've hit that capacity of I just don't feel like I can handle anymore. And so we have these crazy thoughts of what does enough. And at the same time, you go and you look at what a dictionary would define enough as. And there's a thought of a total satisfaction. Have you ever had a moment where you were just totally at peace and satisfied? Maybe it's Thanksgiving Day, and you've had the table and the turkey and the fixings, and you get to the end of that. You know, there is such thing as football on, but we'll forget about the football analogy for a moment. But you just come away, and you've had fellowship with your family and friends. You've had a lot to eat, and you go sit down on a softer seat maybe than the dining room chair, and you're just like, oh, you're satisfied. You're complete. Everything is right where you want it in that moment. And you're satisfied. And I think we look for a lot in life for what can truly satisfy us. And in the reality of it, I think we know, but I think there's a big reminder to it that truly only Jesus can satisfy your soul. And when we get things mixed up in this life, we start looking to other things to be our satisfaction. And that may be things, that might be a healing of a relationship, or that might be more money, or that might be, is there such thing as, is there ever enough money? I work for a nonprofit, so we'd have to say, no, there's never enough money, right? But in our lives, is there ever enough money? You've seen the commercials where somebody's walking around with a briefcase, but the briefcase looks like a 7-digit number. Have you seen this? A retirement commercial. And the question is do you have enough? And that question in retirement is kind of a scary question, right? When people want to retire, but do they have enough? Do they know they have enough? How do you know you have enough? And the blessing that we have in Jesus, as we're going to look at it this morning, is, oh, he has filled us. Oh, he has taken care of us. Oh, he is perfectly enough in all ways, in all situations. Jesus is enough. He is the one that can satisfy our soul. I'm going to primarily be in Hebrews this morning, but if you'll join me in Colossians 1, I'll read from that real quickly here. I love the beauty of this picture as the Apostle Paul talks to us about the supremacy of Christ. In Colossians 1, verse 15, talking about Christ, Paul says, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven, things on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Verse 18 comes back and he says that he might have the supremacy. Christ has the supremacy. Well, I'll tell you, whether we stop and acknowledge that or we do not stop and acknowledge that, Christ has the supremacy, right? At the end, every knee shall bow. That's an unchangeable reality. I want to say fact, because I believe it to be fact, yet it is upon faith that we come to that conclusion that he is the supremacy. And we can see this world around us denying Christ that, saying that it was an evolution that brought us about, saying that it is truly that Bible is is really old school and it's not valuable for today, and that the thought of Christ being Lord and Savior, well, that's not really there. And there's a denial of him having the supremacy. And yet we gather on this Sunday morning as a group of God's church saying, Christ is supreme. Christ is supreme. And as we come to this, then do we think back over the last week? We think back over the last month. We think back what 2023 has brought. And I think we can all find moments where our faith struggled, where we weren't for sure that Christ was supreme. We lost the focus that we ought to have had for whatever reason. And we can all come to the point that we know that he is supreme. We want to make him supreme in our lives. And yet we can all live to a greater extent that Christ truly is supreme, moment to moment, situation to situation, moving forward in our lives. So I want to just roll through this real quickly. I'm borrowing this, quite honestly, from somebody else. This is the tough thought of this, all right? That what does it mean that we are satisfied in our soul by Jesus being supreme? And as I roll through this, I just want to give you a line of thought on this. But following Jesus is not going to make you wealthy. Following Jesus does not mean that you're absolutely even going to be healthy. Jesus is enough. He's enough no matter what happens. Whether we're blessed and we have plenty, or whether we're hurting and we don't have enough of what this world would say is enough, Christ is enough in all things, in all situations. So Christianity through the generations, if we look at the history of it, has been carried on the blood of man, not the wealth of man. And that's a troubling thought for us in America, because money's the answer to everything. You throw more money at it, you get to a different outcome. You get to a different reality. So we pursue healing. Well, we may or may not get that, but he's enough whether that happens or not. Jesus transcends the most horrific circumstances. All the time, every day, every way. I work with children that have been abused and come out of some horrific circumstances. And we talk about, I touched on this in Bible class, but we talk about with those children, how can God be such a loving God and a supreme God if he would let these human beings mistreat me in the ways that my mother and my father have? Or that man that my mom was dating. How would he let that happen? And the only thing that I've ever been able to conjure up is that he transcends that situation. And I've asked some of these, they're teenagers, so that one night when you were like hiding in the closet or hiding under the bed or hiding behind that locked door, scared to death that they were going to come in and that was going to be it. This was going to be the end all, and you weren't even for sure if you were going to survive that night. Now, it's amazing as I describe that as generically as I just did to you, every one of those kids shakes their head and go, yeah, I remember that night. And I don't even know that story. It was a guess. But they've lived it. They're like, yes, that night. I remember that night. They said, you're still here, right? The end didn't come that night, right? I'll even go on to say, I believe God brought you to Midwestern Children's Home so you wouldn't have to live in that kind of fear day by day, night after night. And that we can be, you are now on a journey to healing. You're now on a journey to never have to live that way again. And I say Christ is enough because he did come in that night and transcend. But I believe he transcends our lives. If you've had the moment of a cancer diagnosis, Jesus transcends that moment, even though it's big and scary. I've had friends that lost children, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 15-year-old. I had friends that lost a child. Yeah, he was 40, but for those parents, they lost their child. Jesus transcends those moments. He's enough. the apostles, way back in Acts. It's kind of two stories that kind of run together a little bit because of the flow of it. But, they in Acts chapter 2, they have that big moment when the Holy Spirit has descended on them, and they go out into the streets of Jerusalem, and they preach. They preach Jesus for the very first time. God's church has come, and 3,000 people are added to their number that day. The very next chapter, the Jews are reacting to them, and they lock them up. And they bring them in before the Sanhedrin, and they put them on trial. And they say, you guys got to stop preaching. And all the apostles can say is we can't obey men over God. We've been with Jesus, and we must keep preaching. And they give them a stern warning, and they let them go. And it's just a couple chapters later that they're right back, and they're arrested by the same group one more time. And the Sanhedrin's already given them a warning. It didn't shut them up. They kept preaching. And so this time they have to do something more. And they flog them. They beat them with a whip. Flogging killed some people if they were not as strong. They flogged them. And the apostles, it says, they left rejoicing that they were worthy to suffer. Christ was enough. And I have to look at my life and your life in America and go, do we not live as if Christ is enough and we keep ourselves safe over walking in faith? Safety is more important than what Christ might be calling us to. And I bring to this message very humbly. I bring this message to you as something I'm still wrestling with. And the incredible part of it is as I do find myself in hard situations, when I do find myself overstretched and overburdened and tired, I can come back to this thought of Christ is enough. And I don't know the way ahead. I don't know the answer. I don't know how this is going to turn out. But you know what? I can leave that moment rejoicing just as the apostles did, because Christ is enough. So, this is not about what Jesus gives us or gets us. It's about Jesus being supreme and him being preeminent in all things. And that's a big lesson. That's a big thought, that we're about living for him and not the things of the American culture, is what I would say to you. So I have 3 points to you this morning as Christ is enough. And I will try to go through these a little rapidly as we go through everything. I will be in Hebrews the rest of the time, if you want to turn over there. But in Hebrews 2:10, I'm actually going to start in verse 8 of Hebrews 2. We'll be in Hebrews 2, we'll be in Hebrews 8. But I want to begin, brothers and sisters, this morning, that Christ is enough for salvation. Where else could we begin if we're talking about Christ being enough? And my thought is most of you have put on Christ in baptism. You have died to your old self in that watery grave, and you've come up a new creation in life, and you've begun the journey. You've been walking the journey of a baptized, born-again Christian following Christ. But if there's anybody in this room that hasn't come to that, Christ is enough for your salvation. That there's this separation between us and God, this sin issue. There's this separation of between us and God, and that if we die in that, there are consequences to that. And Christ, to satisfy that demand, went to a cross and died on our behalf. And even more than that, rose from the grave 3 days later to conquer death and its hold on us. Christ is enough for salvation. Hebrews 2 says this. I got to back up to verse 5. I'm going to preach too long this morning. It is not to the angels that he has subjected the world to come about which we are speaking, but there's a place where someone is testified. What is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, and putting everything under his feet. I didn't read that right. We're going to go back again. And put everything under his feet. That's talking about Jesus. Jesus was made a little lower. He was made into a man. And then he was crowned with glory and honor, and everything was put under his feet. The writer of Hebrews continues, "And putting everything under him, God left nothing that is not subject to him. Yet at present we do not see everything subject to him, but we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor, because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. In bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. Both the one who makes men holy and those who are made holy are the same family, so Jesus is not afraid to call them brothers." Jesus is the author of our salvation. He paid the price. He reconciled us with God through his blood. He became our Redeemer. In John 14, Jesus tells the people, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes through the Father except through me." So, brothers and sisters, he's our author of salvation. He brings to us the offer of salvation. And if you have not partaken in that, why wait? Why? The old song says, "Why tarry?" I'm not even sure I know what the word tarry means, but that means not doing it quick enough, okay? If your parent ever says, "Why are you tarrying doing that chore?" that means you weren't getting there quick enough. You need to clean the bathroom faster, all right? Why tarry? Why tarry? Accept the author of salvation that he has there before you. But for the rest of us, I have two more points that I want to encourage us to live by. And I want to tell you that Christ is enough for our lives. In Matthew 6, on the Sermon on the Mount, Christ goes through a whole section on worry. Why do you worry? Talks about God taking care of the birds of the air, God taking care of us in ways we don't even understand, and yet we worry. We stress, we strain. He is enough for our lives. And I don't know that we'll ever get to a point. My mom is a worrier. I think genetically I got the ability to worry. I think that I will be there. But I'm really working on that. That does worry equate to not allowing Christ to satisfy my soul? Does it mean that I'm not truly resting in his supremacy? Is he really the one? We know that the reality is God's always working. God's always striving for us. That's the promise of Matthew 6, that he is always there for us. He's always taking care of us. And so, brothers and sisters, I lay before you a thought that as we go about things in this life, God is ever present. God is ever working for us. There's a song out there that I've learned to love. It's called Waymaker. And it's a song. There is an a cappella version that our church we've been able to sing a few times. But it's a song that's out there that talks about God is the waymaker. He's the healer. He's the miracle worker. He's the one that's taking care of the things in our life. He's the one just taking care of things in our life, period. We need to be reliant on him. We need to be there. And modern Christian music, I don't think the old hymns did this as much, but they have this section of the song they call the bridge. And the bridge is kind of a motivating part that takes the thought of the song a little bit deeper, brings it in a little different way. And usually there's kind of mounts. They repeat it several times. And some of us don't like songs that repeat, but they start kind of soft and low, and they kind of build with it. And in Waymaker, it says this. It says, I just lost my thought. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. On those Monday mornings, it just seemed like everything hit the fan, and it's all going awry, and man, it's going to be a hard week. God's working. God's there. He's making a way through that. When we go through hard moments of life, and the loss of a loved one, I feel like I've been to way too many funerals since this whole COVID thing has been about. I don't know about you guys. God's working in that, and it's been some hard situations. Young families losing fathers. God's working in that. He never stops working. So do I live with that boldness that God's working even when I can't see it? God's doing things even when I struggle to go, what's up with this moment? So I know that I'm in the land of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that I'm from the land of the Cincinnati Reds, but the Cincinnati Reds, once a year, they have what they call Faith Night, and they bring in a contemporary Christian artist that performs their concert after the baseball game. So we went to Faith Night this year, and of course there's the point where the ball game's over, and there's this lull. They've got to set up all the equipment and everything to get going again. And as they were doing that, of course, they cover the infield, because on a baseball stadium, the infield is a precious thing, right? Thou shalt keep it safe at all costs, right? They cover the infield, and then they bring out these 3 chairs. I mean, they're setting up the musical equipment out in the beginning of the outfield, right there behind second base. But in the infield, they set up these 3 chairs. Like, what's going on? The group that was singing that night was called For King and Country, and there's 2 of them. I'm like, there's 3 chairs. What's going on? All right. So they come out. Well, a little bit, here comes 3 of the Reds baseball players. They're not wearing anything that says the Cincinnati Reds. And these are people that, it's Faith Night. These are believers in Jesus. These are followers of Jesus Christ. And they're going to talk about their faith to us as we get ready for this Faith Night. And one of the kind of exciting young players for the Reds, his name's T.J. Friedel, came out, and he was one of the ones. Well, earlier in the game, T.J. Friedel made a total bonehead play of a fly ball in the outfield. He totally blew it. He missed it. It fell to the ground, and whoever we were playing scored. He got the big error that night. Now, later, he came up to bat, and he hit a home run, and so maybe that justified a little bit. But they started asking T.J. Friedel about his faith, and he brought up the moment of not catching that ball in the outfield just an hour earlier, however long it was. And he said, before I found Jesus, before I had the peace and the transcending of Jesus, if I would have made a play like that in front of this big crowd, on whoever might have been watching on TV, whoever's listening on the radio, as a professional baseball player, and all that means, he said, without Jesus, I would have been done for. He said, but I know that Jesus is what matters. I know that really the important things of life are more about faith and what Jesus is doing, and not just a baseball game. And it's the power of Jesus transcending my life that allows me to go back and have the calm spirit to concentrate during that at bat and even possibly hit a home run out. He said that's Jesus gets the glory in that, nothing more. And that he says, I am continually humbled by this game, but I'm more humbled by Jesus than I am this game. And I went, wow, that's it. We all make mistakes. We all make blunders. We all even hurt the people we love. And yet it's Jesus transcending the moments of our lives, that makes it enough. Jesus is enough. He comes through in those moments. God's always working. We need to stand in that. And my last point, and this is smaller, I know this is a little harder to read, but I want to come to you that Christ is supernaturally enough. And I want to come to this because we have to come to the fact that Christ is supernaturally enough if he is God. He's not human. He wasn't just a good teacher. He's supernaturally enough. And I believe this takes it, not that the previous point about he's enough for our lives is not enough. But when we say he's enough, he has a way to satisfy things in a way that we could never even begin to understand. And then as we try to tap into what it means that he is the Son of God and all that is. I mean, we could go to the leper and go, is he supernaturally enough? And that leper that was healed on that day would say, oh, yeah, he was supernaturally enough. And we could ask Lazarus after he was raised from the dead, is he supernaturally enough? And Lazarus and Mary and Martha, after they got it. Remember, Mary and Martha gave him a hard time when he showed up there 3 days late, right? He tarried a little bit there, all right? Is he enough? He is supernaturally enough. And we don't live back in the biblical days of Jesus' life on this earth. And we may not have the apostolic powers of healing, of tongues, of supernaturalness. But that doesn't mean that we don't serve a supernatural God that is still there. Hebrews 2, verses 4 through 18 says this, since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it's not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason he had to be made like his brothers in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Brothers and sisters, Christ is able to supernaturally help us when we're being tempted. Because he was tempted in every way, he understands what we're going through. He understands that for us. And that is the power of living in Jesus Christ. Hebrews 4:16 says this. I'm going to back up to verse 14. Since we have such a great high priest who's gone through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Have you seen this commercial? He gets us. But did you hear how the writers of Hebrews says he gets us? Made like us in every way. Tempted in every way. He gets us. He understands. And oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. So I've probably gone too long this morning, and as I conclude, I just want to give you this thought that if we truly are satisfied in our soul by Jesus Christ as him being enough, then why are we afraid to go where he calls us? We don't always want to go talk to that person because we don't know them that well. We're not always ready to go and give in that way because maybe we're not feeling it exactly. There's a song by Hillsong called Oceans. We sing this again some in our church. But this is the bridge to that song, and I want to offer it up as a prayer to you. That we would say, as we understand Jesus is enough in a supernatural way to transcend our life, that we would say, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. It's an ocean analogy. It's about water, but it's not about waters, and it's not about the ocean. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me to go. Take me deeper. Take me to places I wouldn't go by myself, that my feet would ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. We serve an amazing God. He wants us to do amazing things in this world, in this life. He's called us to do those things. And so as we let his blessing, the blessing of his supernatural spirit transcend our lives, I just pray that you consider how you can take those steps of faith. You can take those challenges, those steps of fear, and walk boldly into that. Whether it's some stress in life or some service opportunity you've been called to love, to give, to serve as Jesus did, as he is enough in all situations. This morning, if you have felt maybe disconnected from Christ, maybe your faith has not been centered on him as you would think, as you would want. I know the elders of this church, the leaders of this church, would want to come and pray over you. And if you've never been baptized, I don't know if the baptism's ready or not, but if you've never been baptized, we can figure a way through somehow, some way. Accept the offer of Christ as your Savior. If any way we can pray over you or meet a need, please come as we stand and sing.